I'm Marilyn, 34 female. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood with my husband, David. As a data analyst, my life revolves around finding patterns in chaos, a skill I never imagined I'd have to use in my own home. My life was, for all intents and purposes, perfect, until a single, maliciously edited audio clip threatened to burn it all to the ground. It was sent by my own sister-in-law, Jessica, a woman I had welcomed into my life as family. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. Life with David had always been a comfortable rhythm. We weren't the couple from a romance novel, filled with dramatic highs and lows. We were something quieter, more stable. We were the couple that built IKEA furniture together without a single argument, the couple that could sit in comfortable silence for hours, each reading our own book. Our home was our sanctuary, a 2-story colonial with a garden I was ridiculously proud of. David, a financial consultant, worked long hours navigating the turbulent seas of the market, while I found my solace in the clean, predictable logic of data sets and spreadsheets. Our evenings were our anchor, a shared meal, a recap of our days, and maybe an episode of a show we were both mildly interested in. It was a simple, beautiful life, one I had carefully constructed and cherished deeply. My relationship with David's family was, for the most part, just as stable. His parents were kind, retired, and lived a few states away, content with weekly video calls. Then there was Jessica, David's younger sister. When I first met her, I was charmed. She was bubbly, energetic, and always seemed to be at the center of attention, a stark contrast to my more reserved nature. As a social media manager, her life was a curated feed of exciting events, trendy restaurants, and picture-perfect moments. I genuinely tried to build a bond with her, inviting her over for dinners, remembering her birthday with thoughtful gifts, and listening patiently as she recounted the endless minor dramas of her social circle. I saw her as the sister I never had. David adored her, and for his sake, I wanted us to be close. For years, it seemed to work. Jessica would come over, compliment my cooking, praise our home decor, and call me the best sister-in-law ever. She was always the first to like my social media posts and the loudest to cheer for my small successes. Looking back, the signs were there, scattered like breadcrumbs I was too trusting to see. There was the way her compliments sometimes had a faint, almost imperceptible backhanded edge. "Oh, Marilyn, this lasagna is amazing. It's so great that you have the time for such complicated recipes," she'd say, a subtle dig at my less glamorous 9-to-5 job compared to her dynamic career. There were the little jokes at my expense during family gatherings, comments about my quiet nature or my practical fashion sense, all delivered with a dazzling smile that made me feel petty for even noticing. I dismissed it all as just Jessica being Jessica. I told myself that her world was so different from mine, and what I perceived as slights were probably just misinterpretations. David, blinded by sibling affection, certainly never saw it. To him, Jessica was perfect, and her playful teasing was just her way of showing love. The illusion of our happy family dynamic was strongest during our traditional Sunday dinners. Every few weeks, we'd gather at our place. David would grill, I'd handle the sides, and Jessica would bring a store-bought dessert and a bottle of wine, regaling us with stories. On one such Sunday, just a month before my world tilted on its axis, the atmosphere was particularly light. The late summer air was warm, and the scent of grilled chicken and my blooming roses filled the backyard. Jessica was in top form, telling a hilarious story about a difficult client. I remember laughing so hard I had tears in my eyes. At one point, she pulled me aside near the kitchen. "You and David are so lucky," she said, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "You have this perfect, quiet life. Sometimes I envy it." She gave my arm a squeeze. It felt genuine, a moment of real connection. I squeezed back, feeling a wave of warmth. I had misjudged her, I thought. She did care. That same evening, she asked me for advice about a financial issue she was having, framing it as something she was too embarrassed to ask David about. We sat on the patio, our voices low, while David was inside cleaning up. I spoke candidly about my own past struggles with student loans and how David and I had worked together to pay them off. I shared my fears about financial insecurity and the importance of having a personal safety net. I was vulnerable, open, and honest, sharing parts of my past that I didn't discuss with many people. I thought I was helping her. I thought I was being a good sister-in-law, offering the kind of support she had just said she envied. She listened intently, nodding and asking probing questions. "It's just so hard," she sighed, "to feel like you're not in control." I sympathized deeply. "I know exactly what you mean," ID said. "There were days I was so worried about our finances I felt like I couldn't breathe. I once told my friend Karen that if things got any worse, I might just have to pack a bag and run away, just to escape the pressure." We both shared a dark laugh, the kind you share when you're admitting to a fleeting, irrational thought born of stress. It was a moment of shared vulnerability, or so I thought. I had no idea that my words, spoken in confidence and empathy, were being captured. I had no idea that this quiet, perfect evening was the source of the weapon that would soon be used against me. The stillness was just the deep, deceptive breath before the storm. The storm broke on a Tuesday. It was a thoroughly unremarkable day, which made the evening's events all the more jarring. I had just wrapped up a complex project at work, and I was looking forward to a quiet evening with David. I'd picked up takeout from our favorite Thai place, and the fragrant smell of green curry filled the car on my way home. I walked into the house expecting the usual scene: David unwinding on the couch, laptop open, the low hum of the television in the background. Instead, I found him sitting at the dining room table, his posture rigid, the room shrouded in an unnerving silence. The table, usually cluttered with mail and keys, was completely clear except for his phone, which sat face up in the center. He didn't look up when I came in. A cold knot of dread formed in my stomach. "Hey," I said, my voice unnaturally cheerful. "I brought dinner." He finally lifted his head, and the look on his face stopped me in my tracks. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a chilling mix of hurt, confusion, and a profound, unnerving disappointment. It was a look I had never seen him direct at me in our 8 years together. "David, what is it? What's wrong?" I set the bag of food on the kitchen counter, my appetite vanishing instantly. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. He gestured to the chair opposite him. My heart started to pound against my ribs. My mind raced, trying to pinpoint any possible transgression. Had I forgotten an important anniversary? Did something happen with his parents? "Talk about what?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly as I sat down. He didn't answer immediately. He just stared at me, his eyes searching my face for something I couldn't identify. Then he picked up his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. "I got a message from Jessica today," he said, his gaze dropping to the device. "She was concerned about you, about us." My confusion deepened. Jessica, concerned about what? Jessica's version of concern usually involved unsolicited fashion advice or passive-aggressive comments about our lack of a 5-year plan. It never warranted this level of gravity. "She said she's been worried for a while," David continued, still not looking at me. "She said you've been unhappy, that you feel trapped." "Trapped? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous." A nervous laugh escaped my lips, but it sounded hollow and unconvincing even to my own ears. David's expression remained unchanged. "Is it, Marilyn? Is it ridiculous?" Without another word, he tapped the screen. A voice filled the silent room. My voice, but it was warped, stripped of context, and twisted into something ugly. "So worried about our finances, I felt like I couldn't breathe. I might just have to pack a bag and run away just to escape the pressure." The clip was short, maybe 10 seconds long. It was from the conversation I'd had with Jessica on the patio, the moment of supposed shared vulnerability. But everything I had said before and after, the context about my past struggles, the empathy for her situation, the dark humor, was gone. All that remained was this cold, calculated snippet. It sounded like a confession. The confession of a woman on the verge of abandoning her husband over money. I sat in frozen shock. The room seemed to tilt, the air growing thin. I stared at the phone, then at David's face. He had switched the recording off, and the silence that rushed back in was heavier than before. "She recorded me," I whispered, the words feeling foreign and clumsy in my mouth. David, she recorded our private conversation. She said she was worried, he repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. He sounded like he was trying to convince himself. She didn't know what to do. She heard the desperation in your voice and she got scared. Desperation? I finally found my voice, and it was sharp with disbelief and rising anger. That wasn't desperation. It was a conversation. We were talking about finank. I'll stress about something that happened years ago. She was asking for advice. She twisted my words. I could hear the hysteria creeping into my tone, and I tried to force it down. I needed to be calm. I needed to be logical. David, you have to believe me. She edited that. That is not how it happened. He ran a hand through his hair, a sure sign of his distress. I don't know what to believe, Marilyn. I hear your voice. The words, why would you even say that, joke or not? The hurt was back in his eyes, deeper this time. He wasn't seeing the betrayal from his sister. He was only hearing the betrayal from his wife. My heart fractured. In that moment, I realized the true, insidious genius of Jessica's plan. She hadn't just used my words against me. She had used David's love for her, his implicit trust in his perfect little sister, as the delivery mechanism for her poison. He was predisposed to believe her version of concern over my version of the truth. I was the outsider in his family, and she was blood. She had known exactly which strings to pull. Listen to it again, I pleaded, my data analyst brain kicking in, desperately searching for a logical flaw he could see. The sound quality, the way it just cuts in and out, it's obviously edited. He shook his head. All I hear is my wife talking about running away from me. He stood up, unable to sit still any longer, and walked to the window, staring out into the dark yard. The Thai food sat forgotten on the counter, its cheerful aroma now feeling like a mocking reminder of the simple, happy evening I thought I was coming home to. The stillness had been shattered, and in its place was a cacophony of doubt and suspicion. And the most terrifying part was the voice in the recording. It was mine, but it was speaking a language of lies I never intended. The days that followed were suffocating. The air in our house, once light and comfortable, became thick with unspoken accusations and a heavy, brittle tension. David was physically present but emotionally a million miles away. He moved around me with a careful, deliberate distance, as if I were a stranger he was forced to share a home with. Our conversations were reduced to barren exchanges about household logistics. Did you take out the recycling? I'll be working late tonight. The easy intimacy we had shared for years had evaporated, replaced by a chasm of mistrust. Every time I tried to breach the subject of the recording, he would shut down, his face closing off like a steel door. I don't want to talk about it right now, Marilyn, he'd say, his voice weary. It was clear he was torn. Part of him was devastated by what he believed I had said, while another part seemed unable to reconcile that with the woman he had known and loved for 8 years. This internal conflict manifested as a retreat, leaving me utterly alone in my own home. My own emotions were a tangled wreck of fury, hurt, and a bewildering sense of helplessness. My anger at Jessica was a white-hot, constant fire. How could she sit on my patio, feign vulnerability, and then twist my words into a weapon designed to destroy my marriage? The premeditation was what chilled me to the bone. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act of malice. It required planning. She had to have been recording me deliberately, waiting for me to say something, anything, that she could slice and dice into a narrative that suited her purpose. But what was her purpose? Jealousy? A sick desire for drama? I couldn't fathom the depths of her motivation, and that uncertainty was terrifying. The hurt I felt from David's reaction was a dull, constant ache. His inability to see through the manipulation, to trust me over his sister, felt like a betrayal all its own. I was his wife. We had built a life together, a partnership based on trust and mutual respect. Yet, with a single 10-second audio clip, Jessica had managed to plant a seed of doubt that was now growing like a poisonous weed in the heart of our relationship. After nearly a week of this torturous silence, I knew I couldn't let it stand. Crying and pleading weren't working. Simple denial was futile against audio evidence. I was a data analyst. I dealt in facts, patterns, and proof. If I was going to fight this, I couldn't do it with emotion. I had to do it with data. I needed to find the first thread of Jessica's deceit and pull on it until her entire web unraveled. My first instinct was to call my best friend, Karen. I met her for coffee at a small cafe far from our usual spots, needing the anonymity. As soon as I sat down, the dam broke. I told her everything, the words tumbling out in a frantic, whispered rush. She listened patiently, her expression shifting from confusion to shock, and finally to a steely resolve that mirrored my own. As a high school teacher, Karen had a finely tuned nonsense detector, and her alarm bells were ringing loud and clear. "She's been jealous of you for years, Marilyn, Ka." Ren said, stirring her latte with unnecessary force. "I've seen it. The little digs, the way she tries to one-up you at every turn. You were always too nice to see it for what it was." Hearing someone else validate my long-suppressed suspicions was like a lifeline. I wasn't being paranoid. "But why this?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Why try to break up my marriage?" "Because it's the one thing you have that she doesn't," Karen stated plainly. "A stable, loving relationship. Her entire life is about projecting a perfect image online, but it's all superficial. You have something real. She hates it." Karen's practical, no-nonsense perspective helped clear the fog in my head. She was right. This wasn't just about a single audio clip. This was a campaign, and if there was one clip, there were probably more. My analyst brain kicked into gear. I needed to establish a pattern of behavior. I started with my phone. I went back through months, then years of text messages between Jessica and me. On the surface, they were friendly, filled with emojis and exclamation points. But as I looked closer, a subtle pattern emerged. Jessica was constantly fishing for negative information. She would text me right after David, and I had a minor, normal disagreement, something she could have only known about if David had mentioned it to her. "Heard you and Dee had a little tiff about the budget. Everything okay? He can be so stubborn about money." At the time, I'd seen it as sisterly concern. Now, I saw it for what it was, reconnaissance. She was probing for cracks, for weaknesses she could exploit. Then I found the first concrete thread. I remembered a conversation from about 6 months prior. David had been passed over for a promotion he really wanted, and he was understandably upset for weeks. During that time, Jessica had called me, supposedly to offer support. She said, "You must be so disappointed in him. It's hard when your partner doesn't live up to their potential." I remembered being taken aback by her phrasing. I had defended David fiercely, explaining that I was proud of him regardless of his job title. I had told her, "His worth isn't tied to his career, and I'm not with him for his potential. My commitment to him is unconditional." I had ended that call feeling uneasy, but had once again brushed it off. Now, my blood ran cold. I scrolled through my call logs. The call had lasted 23 minutes. Then I checked my texts from David later that same day. He had sent me a message out of the blue. "Just wanted to say I love you. Thanks for always having my back." It was sweet, but now it seemed strange. Why would he send that? I scrolled through his and Jessica's public social media feeds from that day. Nothing. But then I looked at their message history on a shared family chat app we rarely used. A few days after my call with Jessica, there was a message from her to David. "Thinking of you, don't let the job stuff get you down. As long as you have people who are truly committed to you, that's all that matters." It was a perfect piece of manipulation. She had likely sent David an edited clip of my conversation with her, perhaps twisting my words to sound like I was disappointed. But when I'd refused to give her the soundbite she wanted, she couldn't prove her point. So she had to pivot, sending him a vaguely supportive message that also subtly implied that my commitment might not be unconditional. David's text to me that day wasn't random. It was a response to a seed of doubt she had planted. He was looking for reassurance. This wasn't her first attack. It was just the first one that had worked so spectacularly. I had my thread. Now I just had to pull. Finding that first instance of manipulation lit a fire under me. The helplessness I'd been drowning in was replaced by a cold, sharp-edged resolve. I was no longer the grieving wife. I was a data analyst with a critical project. The dataset was Jessica's entire digital and social footprint, and the objective was to find irrefutable proof of her deception. My first step was to approach David again, but this time, I wouldn't use emotion. I would use logic. I waited until a Saturday morning when the tension in the house was at a low ebb. I found him in his home office, sketching in a notebook. I didn't plead or cry. I simply said, "David, I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to help me understand something." Intrigued by my change in tone, he put his pencil down. I laid out the evidence I had found. The text from Jessica probing about our budget fight, her phone call after his missed promotion, and the subsequent, strangely timed texts between all three of us. "I don't think this is the first time she's done this," I said calmly. "I think she's been trying to poison you against me for a long time. This is just the first time she got a clean clip she could use." I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was a logical person, an architect who dealt in blueprints and hard facts. He couldn't deny the pattern I was showing him. The seed of doubt Jessica had planted about me was now competing with a new seed of doubt about her. "What are you suggesting?" he asked, his voice cautious. "I'm suggesting she is manipulating you, and I need to prove it," I said. "And to do that, I need to see all of her messages to you, not just the texts. Everything. Every app, every email. If she's been sending you edited clips, there has to be a trail." He hesitated. It was a huge ask, a violation of his sister's privacy. But when he looked at me, he saw the conviction in my eyes. He saw the woman he had married, not the hysterical stranger from the other night. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay." That afternoon, we sat side by side at the dining room table, his phone between us. It felt like a truce. For the first time in over a week, we were a team again, united against a common problem, even if we hadn't fully defined it yet. We started with their text messages. As we scrolled back months, the pattern became undeniable. Jessica's messages were a masterclass in subtle manipulation. She would constantly position herself as his confidant, the only one who truly understood him. She would send him links to articles about relationship problems with captions like, "This reminded me of what you were saying about Marilyn's spending habits." She would subtly frame my actions in the worst possible light. A girl's night out with Karen became, "Hope Marilyn has fun. You must get lonely when she goes out so much." My focus on a big work project became, "Is Marilyn always this distracted? You deserve someone who makes you a priority." To David, who was reading these messages one at a time over months, they probably seemed like isolated instances of sisterly concern. But seeing them all together, laid out in chronological order, it was a clear, systematic campaign to erode his trust in me. David was quiet, his face growing paler with each message we read. He was seeing his sister in a new, terrifying light. The real bombshell came when we checked a cloud-based file-sharing service they both used. Tucked away in a folder innocuously labeled Family Photos, we found it. There weren't photos. There were audio files, dozens of them. They were all short, ranging from 5 seconds to a minute long, and each was labeled with a date. My heart hammered against my ribs as David clicked on the first one. It was a recording of me talking to his mother on the phone a year ago, discussing the stress of a potential move. The clip was just me saying, "I'm just not sure if this city is the right fit for us long-term." The context that I was worried about David's commute was completely stripped away. Another was from a family barbecue with me laughing and saying, "Oh, I could kill him sometimes." A common, joking phrase of exasperation, but without the sound of my laughter or the playful context, it sounded menacing. And then we found the original file from the conversation on the patio, the unedited version. It was 15 minutes long. David pressed play, and we listened in silence. We heard Jessica asking me for advice. We heard my empathetic response, my stories of past struggles. We heard me share my irrational, fleeting thought about running away, followed immediately by my own laughter and the words, "But of course, you never would. You just have to face the music." The part she had conveniently deleted. The clip she had sent David wasn't just edited. It was a deliberate, malicious lie, crafted by slicing out the truth. David sat back in his chair, his face ashen. The proof was right there in crisp digital audio. He looked at me, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the suspicion in his eyes was gone, replaced by a mixture of horror and shame. "Marilyn, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "I can't believe I didn't see it. I can't believe I doubted you." Relief washed over me, so potent it almost made me dizzy. But it was immediately followed by a cold, hard anger. This was so much worse than I had imagined. This wasn't just a recent development, it was a long-term, calculated assault on our marriage by someone we had both loved and trusted completely. "What are we going to do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I looked at the folder of audio files, at the dozens of little digital daggers his sister had created. "We're not going to do anything," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I am, and I'm not just going to expose her. I'm going to make sure she can never, ever manipulate anyone like this again." The investigation was over. The planning was about to begin. The discovery of the audio files changed everything. The tension between David and me dissolved, but in its place settled a heavy, grim determination. David was racked with guilt for doubting me and consumed by a furious sense of betrayal by his sister. He wanted to call Jessica immediately, to confront her eye. And a rage-fueled explosion. As satisfying as that sounded, I knew it would be a mistake. A messy he-said-she-said fight would allow Jessica to play the victim, to twist the narrative again, and perhaps even paint me as the manipulative one who had turned her brother against her. No, a simple confrontation wasn't enough. Jessica operated in the shadows, using whispers and snippets of truth. To defeat her, I had to drag her tactics into the brightest light imaginable. She had built her case against me piece by piece, so I would dismantle it in one fell swoop, in a way that left no room for doubt or denial. My plan began to form, not with a burst of inspiration, but with the cool, methodical precision of a data project. The goal was to create a scenario where Jessica's lies would be exposed by an undeniable, objective source in front of the very people whose opinions she valued most, her family. The annual family get-together for her parents' anniversary was in 3 weeks. It was the perfect stage. It was always held at her parents' house, a large, comfortable home with a big living room where everyone gathered. This year, I would be providing the entertainment. David was my first and most important ally. I explained the plan to him in detail, and his initial desire for immediate confrontation was replaced by a grudging admiration for the strategy. His role was simple but crucial. He had to act as if nothing had changed. He had to continue his conversations with Jessica, feigning that he was still distant from me, still wrestling with the truth she had revealed. This was our bait. We needed her to feel secure, confident that her plan was working and that her brother was firmly under her influence. It was difficult for him, but he understood the necessity. He played his part perfectly, responding to her texts with vague, troubled messages, making her believe she was still pulling the strings. My next call was to Karen. I needed her perspective, not just as my friend, but as an outsider with a good head on her shoulders. I laid out the plan, and she was silent for a long moment before letting out a low whistle. "Marilyn, this is diabolical. I love it," she said. "But you need to be careful. You need to control every variable." She helped me refine the technical aspects. The centerpiece of my plan was a video presentation. I spent hours in my home office, which I started calling my war room. I downloaded all the audio files from the cloud server. Using a simple video editing program, I began to piece together my counter-narrative. I took the malicious, edited clips Jessica had sent to David and put them side by side with the full, unedited recordings. The effect was devastatingly clear. For the clip where I talked about running away, I started the video with the edited 10-second version. Then I would fade to black and play the full 15-minute conversation, highlighting the parts she had cut out, my empathy, my laughter, my explicit statement that I would never actually leave. The contrast was damning. I did this for every single clip I could find a source for. The clip of me saying, "I could kill him sometimes," was juxtaposed with the full audio of me telling a funny story about David assembling a bookshelf backwards, my words clearly drenched in affection and humor. The clip of me questioning our future in the city was followed by the full conversation where I explained my worries about his quality of life and my desire for him to be happy. But I didn't stop there. I wove in the text messages. I created slides showing her manipulative text to David, with timestamps, right next to screenshots of the friendly, innocuous texts she was sending me on the very same day. It painted a picture of a two-faced, calculating saboteur. I also included a section on digital manipulation itself. I found online tutorials explaining how easy it is to edit audio files, to lift words and reassemble them, to remove context and create a false reality. This was to preemptively dismantle any claim she might make that the files were fake or that she had simply shortened them for convenience. The final piece was the delivery system. I purchased a small, high-definition projector and a portable screen. I tested it in my own living room until I knew exactly how to set it up in under 2 minutes. Everything had to be seamless. In the week leading up to the anniversary party, David's reports on Jessica's behavior confirmed she was taking the bait. She was gloating. She told him things like, "I know it's hard, but you'll be better off in the long run. You deserve someone who is 100% committed," twisting the knife she had already plunged into his back. She had no idea he was recording these phone calls on my instruction. These would be my closing arguments. The day of the party arrived. I felt a strange sense of calm. I had my presentation on a USB drive tucked securely in my purse. The projector was in a bag in the trunk of our car. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple, elegant dress, the picture of composure. When we walked into his parents' house, Jessica rushed to hug David, giving me a look that was a perfect blend of pity and triumph. "Marilyn," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy, "I'm so glad you came. I've been so worried about you too." I just smiled back, a calm, placid smile. "We're fine, Jessica. Thanks for your concern." She couldn't read my expression, and the flicker of confusion in her eyes was the first small taste of victory. The guests were all there, aunts, uncles, cousins. The stage was set. All I had to do was wait for the perfect moment to start the show. The party was in full swing. Laughter and conversation filled the house as family members mingled, catching up on news and sharing stories. Jessica was in her element, flitting from group to group, the gracious hostess and beloved daughter. She made a point of keeping David by her side, touching his arm frequently, a possessive gesture that made my stomach turn. She was publicly staking her claim on his loyalty. David, to his credit, played his part with agonizing perfection, looking troubled and lost, allowing her to comfort him. I stayed in the background, making small talk with distant cousins and helping David's mother, Martha, in the kitchen. From my vantage point, I could watch the entire room. I was a predator, patiently waiting for the herd to settle. The moment came after dinner, as everyone gathered in the living room for cake and coffee. It was tradition for someone to make a speech for the happy couple, David's parents. Usually, David or Jessica would say a few words. This year, before either of them could stand, I moved to the center of the room, my heart pounding a steady, determined rhythm. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, my voice clear and calm, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. Jessica shot me a surprised, slightly annoyed look. I was stealing her spotlight. "Mark and Martha, happy anniversary. Your marriage has always been an inspiration to David and me," I began, my voice steady. "And in the spirit of family, truth, and commitment, I've put together a little presentation. It's about the importance of communication and how easily it can be misunderstood." Before anyone could ask a question, David was already moving. He dimmed the lights as I discreetly pulled the projector and screen from the hallway where I'd stashed them. In less than 2 minutes, the system was set up, a blank white screen glowing against the far wall. A confused murmur rippled through the room. Jessica looked utterly bewildered, a frown creasing her forehead. She glanced at David, but he avoided her gaze, his face a grim mask. "Jessica, this story really starts with you," I said, turning to face her directly. "A few weeks ago, you sent David a recording of me because you were concerned. I'd like to start by playing that for everyone so we can all appreciate your vigilance." Her face went pale. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for an ally, but everyone was just watching, intrigued. I clicked the first button on the remote. My disembodied voice filled the room, sounding cold and detached. "So worried about our finances, I might just have to pack a bag and run away." An audible gasp came from David's mother. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably. Jessica, however, seemed to regain a sliver of her confidence. This was her evidence. She crossed her arms, a smug, vindicated look on her face. "Now," I continued as the audio faded, "let's listen to the full conversation that clip was taken from." The one you had with me on my patio when you asked me for financial advice. I played the full 15-minute file. The room was utterly silent as they heard Jessica's voice asking for help, followed by my long, empathetic response. They heard the full context of my statement, my dark humor, and my subsequent laughter. When the unedited file finished, the atmosphere in the room had shifted from confusion to suspicion. Everyone was staring at Jessica, whose smug expression had melted into one of panic. I just shortened it," she stammered. "It was long, I just sent him the relevant part." "The relevant part?" I echoed, my voice dangerously soft. "Let's look at some of your other edits." For the next 10 minutes, I played clip after damning clip. The edited version, followed by the original. My joke about killing David, followed by the hilarious story that prompted it. My concerns about a potential move, followed by the full conversation demonstrating my love and support for my husband. With each pairing, Jessica sank lower into her chair, her face a blotchy mosaic of red and white. The family's expressions had turned from shock to disgust. Then I switched to the text messages. Slides of her two-faced texts appeared on screen, the concerned, sisterly messages to me displayed. Right next to the poisonous, manipulative messages she was sending David, often just minutes apart. The evidence was overwhelming, a digital tapestry of her lies. As the final piece of evidence, I played one of the phone calls David had recorded in the past week. Jessica's voice, confident and gloating, filled the room. "She's just not on your level, David. I knew if you just saw a little bit of the real her, you'd wake up. You'll thank me for this one day." That was the final nail in the coffin. Jessica's father, Mark SR, stood up, his face thunderous. "Jessica," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "What have you done?" Jessica burst into tears, not tears of remorse, but tears of a narcissist who had been caught. "She's turning you all against me," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's the manipulative one, she twisted everything." But no one was buying it. The proof was right there, glowing on the screen. I had used her own methods against her, but with one crucial difference. My evidence was the unedited truth. The confrontation was over. I hadn't raised my voice, I hadn't hurled a single insult. I had simply presented the data and let it speak for itself. The fallout from the family screening was immediate and catastrophic for Jessica. As soon as the presentation ended, the room erupted. It wasn't the loud, dramatic scene I had half expected. It was something worse. A quiet, collective turning away. David's parents, Mark SR and Martha, looked at their daughter with a profound sense of shame and disappointment that was far more cutting than any shouting match could have been. Mark SR simply told her to leave his house. There was no discussion, no negotiation. The command was absolute. Jessica, realizing she had no allies left in the room, grabbed her purse and fled, her theatrical sobs echoing down the hallway. The anniversary party was, of course, over. The remaining family members offered quiet, awkward apologies to me and David before departing, leaving us alone with his devastated parents. In the heavy silence of the living room, Martha came over and embraced me, holding me tightly. "Marilyn, I am so sorry," she whispered, her voice thick with tears. "To think she did this to you, in our name there are no words." That moment was incredibly healing. I hadn't realized how much I needed that validation from them, the explicit acknowledgement that I was family and Jessica was the one who had broken that sacred trust. We talked for over an hour. David, holding my hand the entire time, explained the full scope of what they had found, the months of manipulation, the dozens of recordings. His parents listened, their expressions hardening. By the end of the conversation, they had made a decision. They were cutting Jessica off completely. Not just financially, but emotionally. They would not take her calls or answer her messages until she had undergone serious, professional therapy and had made a genuine, heartfelt apology to both me and David. They recognized that her behavior wasn't just a simple act of jealousy. It was pathological, and they would no longer enable it. The days and weeks that followed were about rebuilding. The first and most important project was my marriage. The chasm that had opened between David and me needed to be bridged. It wasn't as simple as him apologizing and me accepting. The trust had been broken, not by me, but by his willingness to believe his sister's deception over my character. We started going to couples counseling. In those sessions, David was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth about his family dynamic. He had always placed Jessica on a pedestal, viewing her through the rose-tinted glasses of a protective older brother, while always seeing me as a wonderful but still secondary addition to that core unit. He had to learn to recalibrate his loyalties. It was a painful process for him, but a necessary one. He had to understand that when he married me, we became the new core unit. His unwavering trust belonged with me first. Slowly, painstakingly, we rebuilt. We learned to communicate more openly about our insecurities and to establish boundaries with his family, something we should have done years ago. Our relationship didn't just go back to the way it was. It became stronger, forged in the fire of this crisis, and tempered with a new, more honest foundation. As for Jessica, her life imploded. The perfect image she had so carefully curated on social media crumbled. News of what she had done spread through their extended family and social circle. People who had once admired her now viewed her with suspicion and contempt. She lost friends. Her career, which was built on managing public image and social dynamics, took a massive hit as her own reputation lay in ruins. She tried to rebrand, posting vague platitudes about toxic people and moving on from negativity, but it was transparent and pathetic. She sent us both a string of frantic, non-apology apologies. I'm sorry you feel that way, and I'm sorry if you misinterpreted my concern. We ignored them all. According to her parents, she refused to seek therapy, insisting she was the victim. Last I heard, she had moved to a new city, presumably to start fresh where no one knew her or her history. I don't know if I feel pity for her. Mostly, I just feel a profound sense of emptiness where my affection for her used to be. She is a black hole of insecurity, and I'm just glad to be out of her orbit. Life is quiet again, but it's a different kind of quiet. It's not the stillness of blissful ignorance that existed before the storm. It's a more deliberate, more appreciated peace. My relationship with David is better than ever. We don't take our trust for granted anymore. My relationship with his parents is also deeper and more genuine. I'm no longer just their son's wife. I am their daughter, defended and loved. Sometimes I think about the data. The audio files, the texts, the patterns of deceit. As a data analyst, I was uniquely equipped to uncover Jessica's scheme. She tried to use snippets of information to create a false narrative, but I used the complete dataset to reveal the truth. In the end, the story wasn't about the power of lies. It was about the undeniable, unshakable power of the whole, unedited truth. And on that foundation, I have rebuilt my life.